Navy SEALs mocked her crutches. Moments later, a three-star general showed his and they froze. They say every soldier carries scars. Some you see, others you don't. But on that gray morning at Coronado Naval Base, the ones everyone saw belonged to her. Lieutenant Commander Hannah Cole, a Navy medic with a limp and a pair of crutches that had become her silent shadow. No one knew much about her, just that she was transferred from Walter Reed Medical Center after an IED blast in Kandahar nearly took her legs. She never talked about it, never complained, never drew attention. But the SEALs noticed her, and not kindly. The SEAL compound was a world of unspoken rules, precision, pride, and perfection. Every step mattered, every scar was a story, but weakness was unforgivable. When Hannah arrived, dragging her crutches through the mud on a cold morning drill, the jokes began, low, sharp, and cruel. "Hey Doc, you sure you can keep up with the real soldiers? Careful, you might trip over that sympathy stick." Thought this was a war zone, not a rehab center. Hannah heard it all. She didn't respond, she just kept walking, slow, steady, deliberate. One man stood out among them, Chief Petty Officer Blake Rayner, the unofficial alpha of the SEAL detachment. Decorated, relentless, respected, and feared. He'd lost brothers overseas. His heart had hardened like Kevlar. To him, compassion was weakness. And seeing a medic with crutches in his elite unit, an insult. The smell of burnt coffee and eggs filled the air. 100 voices murmured over breakfast trays. Hannah sat alone at the end of the hall, methodically slicing her scrambled eggs with the side of her fork. Across the room, Blake's team laughed, too loud. They were watching her. One of them, Ensign Vale, the youngest, whispered something. Blake smirked. He stood, grabbed his tray, and limped across the room in an exaggerated imitation, swinging an imaginary crutch. "Hey Doc," Blake called out. "You patching us up or joining the next Paralympic team?" The room went quiet, metal trays clinked. Even the base TV, playing a muted broadcast of the Pentagon briefing, seemed to hush. Hannah looked up, calm. Her eyes, cold gray, unreadable, met his for just a moment. Then she spoke softly. "You ever think about who carried you off the field when your buddy stopped breathing, Chief?" It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. Later, those who served alongside her would say that's when everything began to change. But no one, not even Blake Rayner, knew who Hannah really was. She wasn't just a medic. She was a decorated trauma surgeon, one of the youngest ever to receive the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal. She had served in 2 war zones, pulling men twice her size out of hellfire with her own 2 hands, before an IED tore through her convoy near Kunduz. She'd woken up 6 days later at Bagram with both legs shattered, her spine fractured in 3 places, and her team dead. The Navy offered her a medical discharge. She refused. "I'm not done serving," she said. "If I can stand, I can serve." 2 weeks after her arrival, the SEALs were preparing for a joint combat medical readiness drill, a test meant to simulate battlefield triage under fire. Most medics worked from the sidelines, coordinating supplies, tracking vitals, observing. But not Hannah. She volunteered to lead. The men laughed quietly at first, then openly. "Doc, this isn't a clinic," one muttered. "You'll slow us down." But the commanding officer, Captain Reeves, had no reason to deny her. So at 0400 hours, in a downpour that soaked through boots and pride alike, Hannah stood at the line, crutches in hand, vest strapped tight, eyes forward. The simulation began like any other, smoke, gunfire, chaos. The SEALs stormed forward, their radios crackling. In the fog, a mock explosion went off, too close. One of the SEALs fell, screaming. "Medic!" someone shouted. Without hesitation, Hannah dropped her crutches and crawled through the mud. The camera would have caught it like a war film, her body dragging forward, every movement pure willpower. Her face streaked with rain and dirt, her breath short, sharp. She reached the injured SEAL, blood packets bursting from the training suit, and went to work. Hands trembling from pain, but precise. "Stay with me," she muttered, voice steady. "I've got you." In that moment, under the roar of fake gunfire and real rain, the jokes stopped. Blake watched in silence. Mud streaked across his face as she stabilized the man, applied a tourniquet, and called the medevac code by memory. She did it faster than any of them. And when it was over, she pulled herself upright, one leg shaking, uniform drenched, and said simply, "Simulation complete." No one said a word. By afternoon, word had spread. Some called it brave, others called it reckless. Blake called it unnecessary. "She's got guts," he told his men. "But this isn't a hospital, it's the teams. We don't need sympathy, we need strength." But that night, when he returned to his quarters, he found a letter waiting on his bunk. Orders to report for a medical ethics review regarding his conduct. It was unsigned, but everyone knew who had filed it. The next morning, the air at Coronado was thick with tension. In the courtyard, under the shadow of the flag, Blake confronted her. "You think you can walk in here on crutches and start filing reports on SEALs? You think you understand what we do out there?" Hannah didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye, tired but unbroken. "I've been out there," she said. "I've held men together with my bare hands while they screamed for their mothers. I don't need to understand your pride, Chief. I need you to remember your humanity." His jaw tightened, his hand curled into a fist, then slowly relaxed. Around them the other SEALs watched, silent, waiting. Then the unmistakable sound of boots on concrete. Enter 3-star General, Rear Admiral James Porter. The courtyard stiffened. Every man straightened. Every whisper died. Rear Admiral James Porter, 3 stars gleaming on his collar, approached with 2 aides at his side. He was a legend. Decades of combat service, a name spoken with respect across every naval command. He stopped beside Hannah, looked at her crutches, then at Blake. "Chief Rayner," he said quietly, "you seem to have a problem with wounded soldiers on my base." "No, sir, Good, because I happen to be one." And with that, the Admiral slowly lifted his right pant leg, revealing a prosthetic limb, polished metal where flesh used to be. The silence was absolute. "Kandahar 2012, he said, IED. Lost half my leg and half my team, and the person who kept me alive until the evac bird came in." He turned toward Hannah. Was Lieutenant Commander Cole. Every SEAL froze, Blake's face drained of color. "If you mock her," Porter continued, voice firm but low, "you mock every one of us who came home with less than what we left with, but refused to stop serving." He turned to Hannah. "Good to see you again, Doctor." She nodded, quiet, a ghost of a smile. Then the Admiral looked at the team one last time and walked away, each step a quiet echo of iron and authority. No one spoke for a long time. The SEALs stood frozen, the weight of what they'd just seen sinking deeper than any reprimand. Blake's eyes dropped. For the first time, he looked at Hannah not as a crippled medic, but as a soldier. Later that evening, he found her at the infirmary, tending to a training injury. He stood awkwardly in the doorway. "Doc," he said quietly, "you saved him today, and I was out of line." She didn't look up, just kept wrapping the soldier's arm. "We all fight different battles, Chief. Some just leave more visible scars." He nodded, then left silent. Months passed. By the time the next readiness inspection came, Hannah had become an integral part of the SEAL medical team, not because she demanded respect, but because she earned it. She led physical recovery sessions for wounded operators, taught triage under fire, and even convinced the base command to integrate injured veterans into advisory roles, turning pain into purpose. Chief Rayner? He volunteered to assist her in the next field rotation. When asked why, he said, "Because she reminded me that strength isn't just about how far you can run, it's how far you can come back." The sun dipped over Coronado, the ocean glinting gold beyond the chain-link fence. Hannah walked slowly along the pier, her crutches clicking rhythmically against the wood. A few SEALs jogged past, one of them slowed, saluted, then another. Soon, the entire training squad, the same men who once mocked her, stood at attention as she passed. No orders, no announcement, just silent respect. The wind carried the sound of the flag above, flapping steady, proud. In the military, honor isn't given, it's earned, in sweat, in silence, in sacrifice. Lieutenant Commander Hannah Cole didn't need legs that ran faster or arms that lifted more. She carried something heavier, the weight of what it means to serve, even when service costs you everything. And on that base, on that day, every man who'd mocked her learned what true courage looked like. It wasn't loud. It wasn't proud. It just stood tall even on crutches. True courage isn't in battle, but in standing for what's right, even when you stand alone.